I know how this is going to sound. I've replayed that day in my head so many times that I've already heard every possible explanation. GPS error, exhaustion, getting turned around without realizing it. And honestly, I'd be willing to accept any of those. If it weren't for the sound. That's the part I can't explain, because whatever was making that noise was keeping pace with me. Not behind me, not ahead of me, right there with me, the whole time. This happened just a few weeks ago, during spring break. I'm a senior in college now, but I'd gone back home for the week like I usually do. My parents live on the edge of a small town on Vancouver Island, tucked between the ocean and a stretch of dense forest that runs for miles inland. It's quiet there. Too quiet, sometimes. There's not much to do, especially when you're back alone. Most of my friends from high school have moved away or are on completely different schedules. So I was basically looking at a full week of sitting around, doing nothing, which for me isn't great. I've been trying to cut back on a few things. Drinking, nicotine just reset a bit. So instead of letting myself get bored, I decided I'd stay busy, work out every day, keep a routine, lift in the mornings, run in the afternoons. That's how I ended up going out that Tuesday. It was around 5 p.m. when I stepped outside, already dressed for a run. The sun was still up, but the first thing I noticed immediately was the fog. Not normal fog. This was thick, unnaturally thick. It hung low between the trees, spilling across the road and into the yards like something alive. I remember standing there for a second, just looking at it, trying to decide if I should skip the run entirely. I almost did. I really wish I had, but instead, I put in my earbuds, started my watch, and headed straight toward the trail. The route I took wasn't random. It was a loop I'd been running since high school. Back when I did cross country, this was one of my regular routes, just over 3 miles total, starting from my house, cutting through a wooded trail, and looping back out onto the street about a block away. I knew it by heart. Every turn, every slope, every uneven patch of ground. The first quarter mile was just through my neighborhood, quiet streets, a few parked cars. Nothing unusual. The fog was already thick out there, but at least I could still make out the shapes of houses and driveways. Once I reached the entrance to the trail, though, that changed. The second I stepped under the tree line, it felt like I'd crossed into something else entirely. The fog was denser inside the woods, way denser. The canopy overhead blocked out what little light was left, and everything beyond maybe 15, 20 feet just dissolved into gray. The trail itself was still visible, but only barely, a narrow strip of dirt winding forward into nothing. I hesitated for a second, just stood there at the entrance. It felt wrong. Not dangerous, exactly. Just off. Like my brain was trying to tell me something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't put it into words. I almost turned back, but then I checked my watch, took a breath, and stepped in. The air inside was colder, damp. It clung to my skin in a way that made it hard to ignore. My footsteps were softer on the dirt, almost muted, and with my earbuds in, the world felt even more isolated. For the first mile or so, everything was fine. I kept a steady pace, slower than usual because of the visibility, but manageable. I remember glancing down at my watch at around the 1 mile mark, just out of habit. Normal time, normal pace, nothing out of the ordinary. But the deeper I went into the trail, the more the silence started to stand out. No birds, no wind, not even the usual rustling you'd expect from a forest. It was just still, unnaturally still. And after a while, I started to notice something else. I couldn't tell how far I'd gone anymore. At first, I thought I was just overthinking it. Running in fog messes with your perception, that much I knew. Distances feel stretched out, landmarks blur together. It's easy to lose track of where you are, especially when everything starts looking the same. So when I glanced down at my watch and saw I'd hit 1.5 miles, I didn't question it. That was normal. By that point, I should have been approaching the deeper section of the trail, the part where it curves slightly to the left before gradually leading uphill toward the exit. I'd run that stretch so many times I could picture it perfectly in my head. But when I looked up, it didn't match. There was no curve, no incline, just the same narrow dirt path stretching forward into the fog. I slowed down a bit, my pace breaking naturally as I tried to make sense of it. Maybe I just hadn't reached that part yet. Maybe I'd misjudged the distance. That had to be it. So I kept running. Another few minutes passed. I checked my watch again. 2 miles. That's when I felt the first real flicker of unease. At 2 miles, I should have been well past the midpoint. I should have recognized something, anything along the trail. A fallen log, that crooked tree near the bend, even the way the ground changes texture near the incline. But there was nothing. Just the same path, same trees, same fog pressing in from all sides. I came to a stop, completely still, in the middle of the trail, trying to listen past the sound of my own breathing. That's when I noticed my watch again. The distance was still climbing. Ardernling Wu. Ardernling Liu. Ardernling Qi. I wasn't moving. I frowned, lifting my wrist closer to my face like I was seeing it wrong. The numbers kept going. That's when it hit me. The GPS was glitching. That had to be it. The fog, the tree cover, something was throwing it off. That was the only explanation that made any sense. And for a moment, that actually made me feel better, because it meant there was a logical reason for all of this. I exhaled, shook my head slightly, and made a decision. I wasn't going to keep going deeper. I turned around. If I just ran back the way I came, I'd hit the trail entrance eventually. Simple. Except the second I started running back, something felt different. Like the trail behind me wasn't quite the same as the one I'd just come through. I tried to ignore it at first. That feeling that something was off. It could have just been in my head. Adrenaline, confusion, and the fog are messing with my sense of direction. All of that was still more believable than anything else. So I focused on running. Steady pace, controlled breathing, eyes locked on the ground just ahead of me to make sure I stayed on the path. For a few minutes, it worked. Then I heard it. At first, it was so faint I wasn't even sure it was real. A low sound, almost like a hum. I slowed down instinctively, my steps softening as I tried to listen more closely. The sound wavered slightly, rising and falling in a way that didn't feel natural. It wasn't steady like wind, and it wasn't sharp like an animal call. It was drawn out, like something holding a note. I stopped completely, pulled one earbud out. The moment I did, the sound became clearer. It wasn't a hum. It was closer to a moan, but deeper, lower, almost mechanical in the way it vibrated, like it was resonating through the air itself. It swelled, then dipped, then swelled again. Slow, rhythmic, wrong. I turned my head slightly, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. I couldn't. It didn't sound like it had a direction. It just existed around me. That's when the unease turned into something sharper. Fear. I took a step back without even realizing it, my body reacting before my brain could catch up. My eyes scanned the fog, searching for movement, for anything that might explain the noise. There was nothing, just trees fading into gray, and that sound, still rising and falling, like it was breathing. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry, and made a decision. I needed to get out of there. Now, I turned and started running again. Faster this time, not caring about pace or distance anymore. And for a few seconds, it stayed where it was. Then it changed. The pitch shifted slightly, and the next time it rose, it was closer. Not behind me, not ahead, but somehow, keeping up. I pushed myself faster, not pacing anymore, not thinking about distance or form or anything I'd planned before I left the house, just running. The trail blurred beneath my feet, my focus narrowing to a tunnel of dirt and gray fog ahead of me. My breathing grew heavier, sharper, each inhale scraping at the back of my throat as the cold, damp air filled my lungs. And the sound, it stayed with me. Every time it rose, I could feel it in my chest more than I could hear it, like a low vibration passing through my body, syncing with my movement. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Nothing, just fog swallowing the path behind me. But the sound didn't fade. If anything, it felt closer. I ran harder, my legs starting to burn now. I'd already gone well past the distance I normally would have for this loop, and my body was beginning to feel it. My stride shortened slightly, my breathing losing rhythm. Still, I didn't slow down. I couldn't, because every time I even thought about easing up, the sound would swell, louder, closer, like it was reacting to me. I stumbled slightly over a root, catching myself just before I went down. My heart slammed against my chest as I regained balance, forcing myself forward again. "Just get out," I muttered under my breath. "Just get out." I didn't know how far I'd run anymore. 4 miles? 5? It didn't matter. The trail should have ended by now. I should have seen the clearing, the road, anything. But it was still just trees. Still fog. Still, that endless path stretched forward like it had no end. And then, the sound changed again. It didn't just rise and fall anymore. It started to overlap, like there was more than one. A second tone slipped in beneath the first, slightly out of sync, creating this warped, almost layered noise that made my stomach twist. I felt it before I understood it. That sudden, cold realization. It wasn't just following me. There was more than one of them, and they were closing in. I didn't think anymore after that. I just ran. Until suddenly, the trees ahead started to thin, and I saw it. The edge of the trail. I'd burst out of the tree line without slowing down. My shoes hit the pavement harder than I expected, the sudden change in surface almost throwing off my balance. I staggered forward a few steps before catching myself, gasping for air, my lungs burning as I just sprinted my entire body past its limit. I made it out. I actually made it out. For a second, I just stood there in the street, bent over with my hands on my knees, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to convince myself it was over. The fog was still there, but thinner. Not gone. Just weaker. Like whatever had been inside the woods hadn't followed me all the way out. I turned around. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed to prove to myself there was nothing there, that it was all just panic, exhaustion, something explainable. But the moment I looked back toward the trail, I froze. Something was standing just inside the tree line, not deep in the woods, not hidden, right there, close enough that I should have been able to make out details, but I couldn't. It was too tall, easily over 7 feet, maybe more. Its shape was wrong, too thin in some places, too wide in others, as if it didn't fully match anything human. The fog clung to it, distorting its outline, making it look like it was shifting even when it wasn't. And it was swaying, slowly, back and forth, like it was balancing, or watching. The sound was gone, completely gone, but somehow that made it worse. Because now there was nothing separating me from it. No warning, no distance. Just that thing, standing there. I felt it looking at me, even though I couldn't see a face. My body moved before my brain did. I turned and ran, straight down the street, toward home, not once looking back again. And I haven't gone near that trail since. I don't care what anyone says about GPS glitches or getting turned around, because whatever was in those woods that day was real, and it knew exactly where I was the entire time. I didn't tell anyone the full story. Not at first. When my parents asked why I got back so late, I just said I lost track of time on the trail. When my mom pointed out how pale I looked, I blamed it on pushing myself too hard. Even when I tried to explain parts of it to a friend later, I caught myself leaving things out. The sound. That thing at the tree line. I didn't say those parts out loud, because the second you do, it stops sounding like something real and starts sounding like something wrong with you. So I kept it to myself. For a few days, I avoided running entirely. Then, eventually, I started going out again, but only on the main roads. Never near the woods, not even close. I told myself it was just temporary, that I'd go back eventually. But then something happened. A couple of nights later, I was lying in bed, scrolling on my phone, trying to fall asleep. My window was slightly open, just enough to let the cool air in. Everything was quiet, normal, until I heard it. Faint, barely there, but unmistakable. That same low, drawn-out sound, rising, falling. I froze, held my breath, listening. It happened again, closer this time. Not outside on the street, but somewhere in between. Somewhere, just beyond the window. I didn't move, didn't get up, didn't even look. Because I already knew one thing for certain. If I went to that window, whatever had been in those woods would be close enough to see me back.